Chapter 1. Remy. It just didn't make any sense. Except for two of us, if you'd wanted women for the sex slave business, you sure wouldn't have chosen us. And the two you might. I figured out they were plants, shills, the hairdresser and the makeup artist. The other five of us, nope, we were for real. Kidnapped, held. What did they want, our kidneys or something? It just didn't make sense. I'd woken up in a room, a large room perched near the top of a city high-rise that nevertheless felt like a cavern. It was a barracks of sort, all 8 of us kept in that one large room. It was the hairdresser who'd been seated by my bed. "Hi," she'd said so sweetly. "You okay, Remy? Awake? I know you must be confused, but everything is okay. Nobody has hurt us." She was elbowed out of the way by a pudgy black woman who looked my age, about 21 years old, until she opened her mouth and a missing tooth put a few more years on her.
"Girl, you've been kidnapped,"
the woman spat at me.
"Do you remember? Did anybody see you get taken? Come on, sit up. Pay attention."
Kidnapped? Me? My first stupid thought was, what on earth for? I wasn't beautiful. I was bag-o'-noodles broke. No family connections. Who in their right mind would want to kidnap me? I sat up and looked around, muddle-headed.
"What happened to you?"
the black woman pressed.
"Think."
"Give her a minute, Lula," Sweet Smiler said. "She's probably still woozy."
"Screw that,"
the woman called Lula said.
"Somebody might have seen her get snatched. Might be looking for her." "Well, what happened?"
I blinked, looking around. There were beds, but they looked odd, like they were big, heavy boxes bolted to the floor. There was furniture, chairs, tables, a very large sectional sofa arranged before a wall-mounted TV screen, but no lamps, no dressers. Instead, by each bed there was a heavy wardrobe against the wall. There was a large, thick glass window framing the city skyline, and I could see it was daylight outside, which also didn't make sense. It should have been the middle of the night. There were other women scattered about the room, all staring at me with a look of sadness, pity even. The room looked clean, modern, but with the kind of sparseness that says temporary. But what the room really had, in spades, was despair. The air reeked of it. "How do you know my name?" I asked in a voice I was dismayed to hear come out a croak. "Matron told us when they carried you in last night. Do you need help getting to the bathrooms? My name's Mary Ann.
"Bloody hell!"
Lula raged.
"Tell us, did anybody see you get grabbed?"
I stopped and thought. What had happened? No, I don't think so," I said dully. "I came to New York."
"On a job interview, we know. That's how they got most of us here."
Lula sat down on the bed.
"When they took you, how did that go down?"
I ignored her and got up from the bed, wobbling, and Mary Ann grabbed my arm, steadying me. "What's going on? Where is this place? Who are all you people?"
"Nobody saw you get taken?"
Lula inhaled, and I saw her bottom lip start to quiver. "Lula," Mary Ann said, her voice low, kind, gentle. "You know they didn't. You know how it happened for all of us. They aren't going to make a mistake. Let someone see them. You have to stop thinking like that. It's going to drive you dotty. Nobody's coming." "Yeah, they are," another woman called from the other side of the room. "Just not the people we want coming." "Tell me what's going on." I practically screamed, everything about me in total disarray.
"We don't know,"
Lula said heatedly.
It started with Mary Ann. They got her first, about 3 weeks ago. Then,
Who's they? What do they want? Why are... The other woman who'd spoken had gotten up and approached me.
I'm Inga,
She said.
Sit down here and we'll tell you what we know.
I looked at her. She was the prettiest of us, maybe 22 years old, but with glasses and a face a bit too narrow, and chest-wise, pretty much nothing there. I'll get you some water, Mary Ann said in what seemed to me a calculated move, disappearing through an archway at the side of the room.
God, I hope they take her first,
Lula breathed. First? I gasped. Inga gave me an encouraging but sad little snigger.
Mary Ann can be a bit annoying at times. We think she was a cheerleader.
I sat down at a table with them, Inga and Lula. Another woman drifted over to us and sat down next to me. I'm Victoria, she said solemnly. She looked maybe 30 years old, a beautiful face, but created, I could see, largely through cosmetics. I was the third one to land here. First Mary Ann, then Carmen. She pointed to a brown-skinned Latina woman who had been staring at me, but had seemed to lose interest and looked away. Why do they want us? I asked, horrified.
We're pretty sure it's not sex,
Inga said, forcing a smile.
Nobody has been molested in any way,
Victoria added.
They've been respectful of us, even kind.
Bullshit.
Matron decked Kelly. Put her...
That was... Victoria lowered her voice. Necessary, you know that. Kelly was going to rip her vein out. I felt all the blood drain from my head and thought I might pass out. Please, I begged in bewilderment, close to unraveling. Tell me what's going on.
Okay,
Inga said.
There's a woman, she's called Matron, sort of the den mother. You want something, you ask her, she might actually get it for you if it's like tampons or something. Don't waste your time asking her for help, she's one of them. And don't waste any effort on that window. It might look like it's made out of glass, it isn't. And don't bother writing anything on it, a big shutter just comes down over it outside until Matron comes in and wipes the window off. So we know there are cameras in here that we haven't found them. Probably microphones too, I'm guessing. Needless to say, that door over there, you aren't going through it. At least not until they want you to, and even if you did, it's just another locked room out there, smaller than this. It connects to a hallway with an elevator. Over there, she pointed to the archway Mary Ann had passed through, are the bathrooms. No kitchen. They bring us food.
What do they want? Who are they?
I implored. Whenever Matron comes in, it's with 3 men, Inga continued. 3 big men. All of them have tasers, so watch yourself. Is that how they got you? A taser? Are you burned anywhere?
No, I said. I was in my hotel room, sleeping. I had a job interview. Today? What day is this?
No job interview,
Lula said.
That was them. That's how they got you to come here.
But why?
That, Inga said, is the big question. They aren't saying. But, well, notice the beds. 8 beds, and they were all here from the start. Now there are 8 women. We think whatever this is about, it'll start happening soon. We think they got everyone now, everyone they wanted.
But I'm nobody, I wailed. Why would they want me?
We can't figure out the common denominator, but I'll give you the rundown. Like I said, it began with Mary Ann. Inga said, as I was only dimly aware that it was taking Mary Ann a rather long time to come back with the proffered water. Mary Ann is a hairdresser from right here in New York City. She's 32, has a husband and a kid. Next, Carmen. She's from Puerto Rico via New Jersey, 20 years old. She's a singer. They got her to fly up here promising her an audition for a record company. Victoria was 2 days later. She's 30, divorced, no kids. She's a makeup artist from California. They promised her a job working for a Broadway show. Then me about a week after Carmen. I was engaged, just graduated college in Pennsylvania. My boyfriend brought me here to shop for a bridal gown.
Then he's looking for you,
I erupted. A horrible look crossed her face. No,
Inga said. I wasn't kidnapped. He brought me here. Said he wanted me to meet some people. He delivered me right to Matron and the posse. That's what we call the men with her. It was all a setup, and I'd known him for 2 years.
Good Lord, 2 years?
That girl over there, she was next. Her name is, and she swears this is real, Prizes. Won't tell us her last name. She's 21, works at a restaurant in Indiana.
Worked,
Lula corrected her.
I was next, 6 days ago. I'm 23, from Rhode Island. They got me here with a job offer too, secretarial. I took a course, on a scholarship. Now I'm wondering where that scholarship really came from. It was the school that sent me here. Kelly was next. She's only 18. Graduated high school less than a week before they got her.
I just graduated from college, I babbled. Well, that's 3, you and me just graduating from college, Kelly from high school. But I doubt it means anything,
Inga said offhandedly. Probably just the time of the year. This is when graduations happen. But me too. I just finished secretarial school,
Lula said bitterly. Well, not me, Victoria offered. I finished school years ago, same as Mary Ann. No idea? None at all why they've taken us?
I asked in desperation.
We've gone over it and over it, Inga said. The only thing we've come up with is that we are all different. What about you? Anything unusual about you? Any odd experiences? Anything out of the ordinary at all?
Heck no, I said, envisioning a reprieve. I'm from the suburbs. One younger brother still in college. My mom's dead and my stepdad's remarried. I just got a degree in...
There's gotta be something. Lula railed. They didn't just take us all off the street at random. They planned this. They spent bucks on this. Hell, Lula, in my case at least, they spent years, Inga retorted acidly. We need to be nice to them, Victoria urged. That's the only way we're going to get any information from them. Play along.
Play along with what? I said. If they haven't told us what they want, how do we know what to play along to?
They've told us one thing, Mary Ann said, finally returning and placing a glass of water on the table before me. There is going to be an event, an important event, and we need to...
I think it's an auction. A new voice chimed in. For us. I looked up and there was the Latina girl. Her voice was soft.
What? Mary Ann said, aghast. No, that's not it. It sounds more like... Why do you think it's an auction? Inga interrupted.
Because of what they've given us. The clothes, the makeup. They want us to dress up for it, remember? Matron said. They've given us food. They've kept us healthy. We'll get a better price for them if we look good. No offense, I said, looking about at everyone. But if they wanted to auction off women, none of us here are exactly the never-to-be-kicked-out-of-bed-for-eating crackers type. Lula was too plump, Inga was flat-chested, and Carmen had a mustache and cactus legs. Prizes was too skinny and bookish-looking. And me, well, not exactly Vogue material on a good day, and it wasn't a good day.
No, Prizes said from across the room, the first time I'd heard her speak.
But there is something. We have something. And whatever it is, it's worth an awful lot. And I think we'll each be bought for it at this auction. And we know what it's called.
No, Prizes, we don't. We don't know what that man meant when he said that.
Mary Ann snapped. Said what? I asked.
When Kelly slashed her vein, they ran in, grabbed her. One of the men spoke into a phone. He said, "Code something." Then he said, "One of the charms is injured." That's what he called Kelly. One of the charms. We are each a charm. What is a charm? Something magical. That's what this is. We have something magical, and they know it, Prices said emphatically, trying to be convincing. Prices, I decided, was nuts. Unless you counted my checkbook balancing methods, there was sure nothing magical about me. When is this auction? I asked. We don't know. It's an auction. Victoria lambasted me, and both Lula and Carmen were, I saw, eyeing her suspiciously. All they'll tell us is soon, but you're the last bed to fill. So if everyone they want is here now, I imagine invitations are going out to the bidders, so it won't be long. Carmen just paced away, as if she'd said her piece was done. A charm? I was a charm? It was the first time I'd ever heard that. Thank God I didn't know what it meant. Or I might have slit my wrist, too. Isaiah. Packen Inc. released pre-information about the charms to trackers when the charms turned 14 years old, though not their identities. Identities were released when the charms turned 16, because that was when Packen opened up early purchase bids on them. The reason Packen gave us the charms' identities was so if we wanted to, we could go have a no-contact look at them, which Packen, of course, hoped would get us to make an early purchase bid on them. I'd had my own charm for 5 years when I received Remy's pre-information from Packen and saw her photograph. But I knew charms were out, and even though Remy wasn't the right age for me, I was intrigued. So, 2 years later, when Remy turned 16, I went to have a look. From all the reports I'd read on Remy, she'd had a pretty normal childhood. Nothing unusual ever seemed to happen in Remy's life. At least not that made it into any of the reports I was given on her. But I knew Packen sometimes sugar-coated the reports, and for the kind of money any successful early purchase bid required, I sure didn't want to find out 5 years later that I'd bought some crippled meth-head psychopath or something. So I wanted a close-up look at her, and that was how the convenience store incident occurred. I'd been following Remy from school. It was winter, and I'd slipped on the ice, scraping my hand as I landed. So when she entered the store, I decided to go in too, to wash off my hand and to keep studying her. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, Packen would have had a hissy fit if they'd ever found out I'd gotten that close to her. But I'd scoped around. There were no Packen spotters about. So what the heck, I figured. It wasn't like she was going to notice me. She was a teenager. I was early 50s. No 16-year-old girl was going to waste her time noticing some old guy. Still, I was careful to stay well away from her. I watched her through the store's large plate glass windows, and when she'd selected her appallingly self-indulgent junk food and headed to the counter to pay, I slipped in and went to the back of the store and got myself a bottle of water out of the cooler, figuring the cold water would take the sting out of my hand. I expected her to pay and just leave. Instead, she suddenly froze, and even I, in the back, heard that loud, "Oh," that came from her mouth. "I forgot Mom's milk. Wait a minute." That's what she said to the clerk. She whirled around, all teenage gawky, and rushed back to the coolers exactly where I had taken refuge to spy on her from. And it was a dead end, a corner. All I could do was turn my back to her as she flung open the cooler door, grabbed her milk, and, I thought, would race back up to the cashier. That's when I learned why Packen was so strict about not letting any of us trackers go too near an unbonded, free charm. Remy removed her quart of milk and was about to leave when she stopped, the milk suspended in midair. I felt her gaze on me and couldn't stop myself from looking up to meet it. She looked right at me, and her mouth dropped open. Now I know I am a powerful tracker, but Christ, she was only 16, without a drop of training, and for goodness sakes, there couldn't have been but a microgram of my blood on that cooler door handle. But the effect I had on her was instantaneous. Her arm, not holding the milk, wrapped around herself like she was suddenly frigidly cold. She took a step back as her face tightened in what can only be described as utter fear. "Remy, Remy," I wanted to say, "it'll be okay." And then I well-nigh burst out laughing at the thought of lying to her like that. I did the only thing I could. I sauntered past her out of the store. When I got in my car and looked up into the store, she was still there, by the cooler, staring at me. I always wanted to ask her what it had felt like to her that day, but I never risked it. I drove off, but with a sensitivity like hers, I immediately phoned Packin and put in an early purchase bid on her, even though I knew the peril I'd put her in. I did not, of course, know the peril I was in. They were surprised. I made the bid quite high so that if any other tracker put in a bid on her, it wouldn't top mine. I knew come hell or high water, when Remy's too far away auction day arrived, I'd be the one whose name would be put on her papers. She would be mine. There was simply no other outcome possible for either of us. So that's why I was pretty excited when, 5 way too long years later, no one having topped my bid when they still could have, and Packin having accepted it, I at long last watched on the monitors as Remy was finally brought in, inoculated, examined, and finally stirred, waking up slowly in the holding room. She didn't really look all that different from when she was 16. She still had that ridiculous hair, over a yard long, past her waist, a flattering sheet of lovely sleek brown gloss when it was brushed, but a nattering, unsightly calamity when it wasn't. She was tall, but she had lost the gangling beanpole effect she'd had at 16, and replaced it with an endearingly graceful and slightly curvous innocence. "It went smoothly?" I asked Cal. "She didn't get hurt?"
"No, Isaiah, she's fine," Cal answered. "Slept like a baby through the whole thing. You saw, even through the inoculation. She drank the entire can of soda before she went down. She was out like a light before we even entered the room. But that's also why it's taken her so long to wake up. Don't worry. Mary Ann knows Remy got a strong dose. She's keeping a careful eye on her. All of Mary Ann's signals say Remy's good. One of the easiest captures I've ever done."
I looked at Cal and knew that was saying something. Cal was 60 years old, huge, muscular. He'd done numerous captures of the charms. And if rumors were true, there had been some pretty hairy moments for him. But no charm had ever been killed, though there were stories of a few that had gotten hurt. Cal had put a stop to that when he'd taken charge of the capture unit. For Cal, the safety of the charm had been paramount during a capture. If Cal wasn't able to guarantee the charm's safety, he called the capture off, no matter how much Packin howled. A few charms had even missed their auction day because of Cal's insistence on protecting their well-being. But, not surprisingly, they were just offered in subsequent auctions. From what I'd heard, that's what had happened to one of the charms in Remy's auction, the black girl, Lula. But this auction, Remy's auction, was special. Everyone knew it was going to be Packin's last auction for 12 years. "I think your girlfriend's hovering too much," I said. "She'll give herself away. She should be more like Victoria, stay in the background." Mary Ann, Cal's girlfriend, was a former charm who, after she'd worn out, had become a prep trainer for the recently captured charms.
"Since that incident with Kelly, she's being overcautious," Cal said.
Can't blame her for that.
Only 18, I said, shaking my head in disapproval. Packin' getting greedy? Why'd they take that one so young?
What, you don't get it? She was the last one before the crash, Isaiah. If they'd waited another 3 years, Kelly would have been alone at her auction. So they had no choice. There's a 20-year-old in there, too. Geez, I knew this day was coming, but still, it's a blow. But Kelly's in pretty good shape now, you know. She's going to make the auction.
I wouldn't bid on her.
No one would expect you to, Isaiah,
Cal said with a flush of sympathy on his face. Damn, I'd walked right into that one. Everyone knew my last charm had committed suicide. Everyone also knew that if Packin hadn't already accepted that early purchase bid I'd put in on Remy, I could have kissed their collective backsides before they would ever have let me buy another charm. But they had accepted it, so, suicide or not, they were stuck. Consequently, it was damn lucky for me I'd put in that bid on Remy, though I knew Packin was mighty unhappy about it. They'd tripled my bid trying to buy her back, probably at Woot's direction. But now I like to say to myself that it was mighty lucky for Remy, too, that I'd made that early purchase bid on her, something she would no doubt quickly label a perception highly polished by well-chosen hindsight. So how's the auction shaping up tonight? I asked Cal.
The usual. But being the last one, magnified a bazillion times.
He scowled.
Same grumping and moaning from the guys who aren't getting in. The favorite charm is that one over there, the one in the corner,
he said, pointing at the monitors.
Her name's Prizes. Don't tell anyone I told you this, Isaiah. But since I know you're not going to bid on her, she's one of Hamill's too. We're admitting 8 bidders into the auction just on her alone. And you wouldn't believe the number of auction invitations requested on her. Amazing she didn't get snapped up with an early purchase like your Remy.
I let out a long, slow whistle. 8 bidders at the auction fighting over one charm. It would be a bidding war. Anything about Remy? I asked.
I know several people planning on making you offers. You're not going to accept any, are you?
Hell no.
Constantine wants her badly, Isaiah. He put in a formal protest against you getting her. Tried to get you disqualified because of what happened to...
They can go screw themselves, Cal. Remy's mine. I'm not selling her. I'm keeping her. Full term.
God, I hope Constantine doesn't get a charm tonight. He's one nasty piece of work. So tell me, how did you know about Remy?
He eyed me suspiciously.
How'd you know she had such a high sensitivity quotient? The spotters tell me it might even be off the scale. Set a new record.
I smiled in a way to discourage further interrogation. Everyone wondered how I'd known to bid on Remy early and bid high. But they couldn't prove what I'd done, and I sure wasn't stupid enough to admit to it. I would have been booted from Packin in a nanosecond if they'd ever learned I'd let Remy come into close contact with me, with my blood, before she'd been inoculated, while she was still free. And looking back, I can see they would have been absolutely right. It's what caused the whole mess, the whole disaster. Ultimately, anyway. So, everything set for tonight? Pity they won't just let me take her now, I said.
Rules are rules. Early bidder now. Everyone they're admitting has a right to take a look at her, decide if they want to make an offer to you. 'Cause you know darn well Packin would get a cut of that. Frankly, I think it will be interesting to see how high they'll go. Who knows? Maybe you'll be tempted. We both knew that was nonsense.
There'd be no new charms ready for auction for the next 12 years. And even if there were, Packin would never voluntarily have given me another one. Not after what happened with my former, a dead charm. There was just no excuse for it. That's what they were all thinking. And the misery of it was that they were right. I knew I should have done differently. Well, regret wasn't going to undo it, but I was determined it was going to serve as an aide-memoire in my binding of Remy.
I would have new restrictions, new punishments now.
Definitely no more Mr. Nice Guy, and there would be no repeat of my prior charm's choice to exit.
Well, I'll see you tonight then, Cal.
Keep her safe for me.
Will do, Isaiah. And Isaiah, for what it's worth, it wasn't your fault. A lot of us think that. It wasn't. Maybe it was the training teachers. Maybe they fouled up. But good. You just got the blame for it. Things are damn well gonna be better for you this time. With Remy, I'm sure of that. 'Cause I'll let you in on a little secret. There's been some talk I've been hearing about rogues getting so desperate now, they're gonna target training. Probably just a bunch of malarkey. But I'm going to stick my nose in there anyway. It'll just be for a short time. But I will keep an eye on your Remy for you, you'll see. She'll be trained right. You finish, she comes out. She won't be any trouble to you at all.
Remy, no trouble. My God, what a fantasy that was.
Chapter 2. Remy. Remy, please come over and join us, Matron said to me.
You're new, you need to hear this.
Go take a flying leap, Hibbick, I raved, wanting to rip her a new one. Victoria looked confused. Head bitch in charge, Kelly whispered. Matron sighed heavily, as if I was bungling inadequacy personified.
You want to leave here?
She asked. I'm the one who can tell you how. Not interested, suit yourself. You can stay behind while everyone else leaves tonight. Tonight, Carmen said, and I heard the icy trepidation in her voice. The auction's tonight? I saw it. It was right there. For one moment there was a look of absolute shock on the woman we called Matron's face. She was in her 50s, stout and dour. She gave the air of a hulking linebacker in urgent need of very major breast reduction surgery, and it was all downhill from there. The three guys behind her, they gave the air of T-Rexes, big T-Rexes. Carmen had landed it smack in the Hudson all right. The event was an auction. In a way that was comforting to me. I felt like, geesh, nobody's going to pay money for me. But then I thought, oh my God, what'll happen to me when nobody bids? Carmen, Matron said in cloying affectation, why do you think tonight is an auction? I told you it's a social event. A chance for you to meet people who can help you. People you can leave here with. They won't hurt you. Has anybody here hurt you? The people you'll meet tonight.
Not hurt us, Lula screamed. We've been kidnapped. You're all a bunch of crazies. God only knows what's going to happen to us. Tonight we could all be dead, tortured, thrown into...
Please, Lula, Marianne said. I'd like to hear what she has to say. Me too, Victoria said. Figures, I heard Carmen mutter under her breath. Matron sat on the long, large couch, signaling for the rest of us to come sit down too. Marianne and Victoria did immediately. After a beat, Inga sat down, though not too closely. Prizes never budged from her corner of the room where she stayed incessantly, rarely speaking. Carmen approached, but she did not sit, she stood. Lula finally flung herself onto the couch, glaring at Matron, obviously gauging whether she could get to the woman's throat. I saw the 3 men, matron's guards, shift jitterly, watching Lula. The woman, or rather girl because that's what she looked like, that I'd been introduced to just an hour before, Kelly, looked at matron warily, then moved like a wraith to the very end of the couch and sat down, as if readying to spring up again. Her reappearance had brought no explanations. The door had simply opened, she'd walked in, the door had swung shut again. I noticed her eyes were dilated. I suspected she was drugged with a mild sedative. "Tonight," matron began in a silken voice, "you will meet several men. These men are extraordinary individuals. All of them are quite wealthy. Some are captains of industry." "You strong business," I stage whispered. "Got a titter out of prizes." "Others are perverts." Lula fumed. "They're here to buy women at an auction. You're all a bunch of dirty perverts."
"I can assure you that there are no such persons among them," matron said, wincing at Lula's insult. "These men have been screened like you cannot even comprehend." "What do they want with us?" I asked. "They will tell you that in due time, Remy. But I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. It is not to hurt you. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But here's what you should know. You will each leave with one of them, and you have a say in who that man is."
"Lie," Carmen decried. "Total lie." "Carmen, you can affect it. If it's a close call, your preference will be taken into account. So it behooves you to get to know these men. Get them to want you. The more men who want you, the more money you'll make." A voice from the other side of the room scoffed. "Prizes." "No, dear," matron said, flashing what I'm sure she thought was her very best smile back across the room at her. "The more choices you may get. That's why it's important for you to look your best tonight. We've given you everything you need. Make yourselves beautiful. Be sociable. Or the terrorists have won," I sneered. "You are one stinking douche, lady. I haven't heard such godshop drivel since—" Lula lost it, launched herself at matron like a deranged tiger. Matron flung her aside like a rag doll. As Lula went flying, Inga and Carmen charged matron too. Not exactly an attack, but more to come to Lula's aid. I'd never done anything physical like that in my life, but the sight of matron hurling Lula across the room like she was nothing, something in me just snapped. I too lunged at matron, and that's when Victoria grabbed me, whirled me around, sent me sprawling into the carpet, but only after first knocking my head sharply into the corner of a wooden table, a table that didn't budge when I hit it, a table I only vaguely realized was bolted to the floor. "Shit!" I heard someone say. I heard screaming. I heard sizzling. But I didn't move. Mostly I just heard a slow, steady hum in my head. And then I didn't hear anything at all. "They've killed me," I thought, "and I don't even know why. Shit is right." I was lifted. "Careful," I heard someone hiss. "Little late for that," I thought. And then I felt something cold. I opened my eyes. Mary Ann was standing above me. I was back on the bed I'd already woken up on once before.
"Remy, why'd you do that?"
she moaned.
"You're a mess. Your face is a mess."
My face? In everything that was happening, she was worried about my face? That was the moment I knew she was a plant. A fake was one of them. And I wanted to kill her. I would have even maybe tried if my hands hadn't been tied to the bed. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling like, geez, déjà vu, again. "They took you out of here for less than an hour. Matron said they examined your head. You're not hurt, not seriously. Just a lot of swelling." Mary Ann pressed whatever the cold thing she was holding against my cheek.
They left some pills for you if you have a headache.
No, I said. To Lula, to... Right here, Lula said, appearing above me. I got zapped by one of the assholes. Me too, I heard another voice say. Prizes. She'd apparently joined the melee. Good for you, I thought. Then I remembered Victoria. Where is... I am so sorry, Victoria cried, literally, tears leaking down her face. I was afraid Matron would throw you like she did Lula. I didn't mean for you to hit the table. I didn't. Please believe me, Remy. I just didn't want anybody getting hurt. I am so sorry. I looked up at Carmen, who was also now standing above me, and saw that she too didn't believe a word of it. Why am I tied down? I asked. We all were, Lula said. Well, not all. She glared at Victoria. I said I was sorry, Victoria bleated, all aflutter. Get out. We turned, even me lying down though I was. A man I had never seen before was standing in the doorway, the open doorway. They know, he said. Victoria nodded passively to him and walked away, out through the doorway. He looked at me. Here. He threw something at Mary Ann, turned and left. The door swung shut behind him automatically. I heard a little vacuum noise of rushing air from it, like we'd just been sealed back in. Mary Ann looked at the object he'd thrown at her. The key, she said gleefully, unlocking the cuffs on the bed that had been holding me down. I sat up and immediately wished I hadn't. The room swirled. I want my mom, was all I could think. My dead mom, or my brother. Please. And then I just cried. I bawled. They all moved away from me like they knew to leave me alone. They'd all been there, even Mary Ann. All that day there were hushed little conversations between the other women. Finally, it was Inga who spoke to me. Are you going to do it? She asked. What? Get dressed up for them. Be nice to them. It's what everyone's been talking about. The general consensus is that being uncooperative hasn't gotten us anything. Carmen's thinking that if we do it, if we get all gussied up for them, act nice, that if Matron is telling the truth, maybe we can choose who... She couldn't say it. Buys, I said. Buys us tonight. Lula doesn't believe it, but I think she's going to do it anyway, play along. I mean, if it's true, it would be to our advantage to select. She gave me a meaningful stare that I knew meant select the man we have the best chance of escaping from. I'm going to do it. Mary Ann's offered to do my hair. Ah, I thought as the pieces fell into place. That's why they planted a hairdresser. Not just to keep watch, steer us all in the right direction, but to do our hair for their big auction. Same for the makeup artist, though they'd lost her. I wondered if any of the other women had guessed it, then remembered Carmen's muttered figures when Victoria had said, me too, after Mary Ann said she wanted to hear what Matron had to say. So at least Carmen knew. But Carmen was still going to let Mary Ann do her hair. Not me, boy oh boy no. I wasn't letting that treacherous dumb cluck anywhere near me. Have you seen your dress? Carmen herself asked me, lurking behind Inga with a frown on her face. And the shoes? They're in your wardrobe. I made no move to open the wardrobe. I was still dressed in my own famine underwear, drab jeans, and the rumpled blouse I'd fallen asleep in at the hotel. They had not undressed me in either bouts of my unconsciousness. That somehow made me feel a little more secure, a little safer, until I realized that was probably why they hadn't stripped me. They wanted me to feel that way. Inga opened the wardrobe by my bed and took out an evening gown. It was gorgeous, beige with brocade and sparkles in an arabesque design. Then she took out shoes. Wow, we are talking spikes. They were not just sexy, they were out and out class. All of it just wonderful. Carmen saw my look and her frown deepened. This, she said in a nervous tone, is about $15,000 worth of glam, in case you don't know. And we each got a designer label ensemble, perfectly matched. They spent over $100,000 just to pretty us up for tonight. $100,000. My God.
We have something, and whatever it is, it's worth an awful lot.
I remembered Prize's words like a malediction, thinking that maybe she wasn't so nuts after all. Marianne bustled over.
Come on, let's get your hair set.
She prattled to Carmen, and I saw the ire in Carmen's eyes as Marianne led her away.
Then after, I'll start on you, Remy,
she called out as she disappeared into the bathrooms with Carmen. Over my dead body, ho! By evening, there were no clocks, but from the lights below out in the city, I judged it to be around 8 o'clock. Everyone but me had been transformed. Nobody looked like a movie star, but dang, they did all scrub up pretty well. If anyone had been smiling, which nobody was, they would actually have made it to prom queen pretty. Well, maybe not queen, but still pretty good. Carmen's mustache was even gone. They were in stunning gowns, all different colors. I could almost hear a fashion announcer crooning. Mint, sapphire, ivory, red jasper. Each gown fitting each woman perfectly, not just in size, but in style, too. That just made it more frightening. Whoever they were, they'd known each of us well enough to not only know what size clothes we wore, but what style clothes looked best on us. I presumed the gown they'd given me would have looked fantastic, but then again, a 10-grand dress, probably be hard not to. The women had their hair piled on top of their heads in either elegant chignons or intricately curled buns with French curls. Even Kelly, whose hair was just a short bob, had rhinestone butterflies pinned into it, making it look fabulous. Me, I was a fashionista, with my swollen, purplish-green face, my hair, my floor-drobe clothes, everything. And I was damn well going to stay that way, much to Marianne's agony. Please, Remy, she implored. There's still time, if— No, Prizes interrupted her, stiffening. There isn't. We all followed Prizes' stare. At the door, it was opening. Matron was standing there, her posse at her back. She lit up like a Christmas tree as her eyes swept the room, gazing at everyone, until she came to me, whereupon she looked like she wanted to gag. Involuntarily, she glanced at Marianne in an accusatory glare. You, almost all of you, her eyes blazed at me as her behemoth breasts swelled, look lovely. She paused as if expecting a group thank you. Nobody said anything, and an awkward, ill-omened rustling of silk, chiffon, velvet, and cashmere started filling the silence. Though jiggling, Matron collected herself quickly. We ladies will ride the elevator up in groups of 3, she pronounced. You the first group? Lula leered. When you get up there, mingle. Introduce yourself. Matron ignored Lula, though her cheeks flamed. Have some champagne, though not too much. You don't want to get tipsy. Kelly, Inga, you're first, with me, this way. She beckoned them forward to her, to the door. Inga turned and looked at me, her face pale, her whole body starting to shiver.
If I don't see you again,
she whispered, but everyone heard it. She shrugged. I reached out and squeezed her hand. It was ice cold. The posse stepped back, giving way in the gentlemanly, polite manner men do for ladies, and Kelly and Inga walked stiffly past them out of the room, followed by Matron, then the posse, one of whom never turned his back on us. It was always like that, I'd seen. Whenever Matron was in the room, the posse was in the room too, and at least one member had his eyes on the women at all times. They were meticulous in that. A few minutes later, the door reopened, Matron framed in the entranceway. "Carmen, prizes, now you. Remy, I urge you to reconsider your appearance. I positively guarantee that you are not doing yourself any favors here. At least do your hair. And I'm sure there is concealer in the bathrooms that would help with your bruise. This way." And again the posse behind her stepped deferentially aside to let Carmen and Prizes walk past them. All I could think was, what is it with this bunch and hair? I was left alone with Mary Ann, who looked positively luminous, partly because she was standing next to me. "I could," she cajoled, reaching for my hair. "I could just brush." I took a step back from her, repelled by the idea of her touching me. "No," I said. I came within a hair's breadth of telling her what I thought of her. Hell, I came within a hair's breadth of ripping her eyes out. But I figured, what would it get me? "Thank goodness," I said, and did nothing. "But why?" she pleaded in frustration. "They told us if we—" Anyone who thinks we have any power, any control over whatever's going on is deluding herself. I'm not going to be a gourmet at a feast of self-deception, Mary Ann. But then I couldn't help it. My mouth kept going. There's no justification for what these people are doing. I don't care what their purpose or cause is. Doing this to us is ethically, legally, morally wrong. And everyone involved in it, I hope, will one day burn in hell, which I now fervently hope exists." She took a step back from me like I'd slapped her but good. Gotcha, I thought. The door opened again. It was my turn to go see what they had in store for me. "Please, God," I prayed silently, "if it's gonna hurt, let it be quick, and let me go down fighting." Isaiah. They'd told me Remy had been injured, but they hadn't told me the extent of it. "Isaiah," one of the directors had said to me, and I'd known instantly something bad was coming, because the men of Packen always called me Mr. Gromit. It was only at my charm's funeral that one of them had ever called me by my first name. "Little rumpus in the holding room. Your charm got a poke in the eye. She's fine. Nothing to worry about. She's been thoroughly checked." A poke? When Remy plodded into the presentation room, she looked like something that had been living under the Brooklyn Bridge, dowdy and awful. The left side of her face was swollen and discolored, her clothes were the same ones she'd arrived in, and there was a slight hunch to her walk. A hesitation not from fear, but from physical weakness, and my Remy was not weak. "What the hell?" I breathed to Cal while I stared at her out of the corner of my eye from the center of the room. "Her hair isn't even combed." Cal rolled his eyeballs, chagrined.
"I'm sorry, Isaiah. I should have put her first on my capture list for you. Given Mary Ann and Victoria more time with her. But you know, I always like to let them go to their graduations if I can. My mistake."
All the charms were wearing expensive designer evening wear, except Remy. Packen got the charms dressed up for presentation for one simple reason. It improved their behavior. Put a woman in an evening gown, make her have to totter around on $4,000 spiked high heels without falling on her posterior, and she is not going to act crazy. She is going to act ladylike. And that was what Packen wanted, showing off the charms to the trackers as polite and easily trainable, because that jacked up the bids. Packen did not want what Remy was doing, defiance. For a moment, I wondered why they'd let her get away with it, but then realized it was because of my early purchase on her. It just didn't matter what anybody bid on Remy. I had her, I was keeping her, Packen knew that. What I knew was that if somebody offered a bid in extreme excess of the early purchase I'd paid on her, some director somewhere would put pressure on me to sell her back, or else.
And I knew what that or else would be. A couple directors had already hinted at it. An investigation. Not into my former charm's suicide. They'd already investigated the daylights out of that one. But into how I'd known Remy would be so valuable when she was only 16. Now I knew I'd sure never say anything about my contact with her. But what if Remy did? What if when I walked up to her she said, "Hey, you're the guy from the convenience store"? I'd be fried. And from the look on Constantine as he eyed Remy's entrance into presentation, I was pretty sure something like that was exactly what he had planned. So I couldn't risk approaching Remy there. In fact, I kept myself pretty well shielded from her view. Probably unnecessary, as she didn't give any of us much of a look, at least not at first. No, I needed our first contact, I suppose I should say our first authorized contact, to be a bit more private, in case she did recognize me, despite my different haircut, different clothes, and 5 years of age. For me, that was what I intended to use her binding week for. That's what Packin called it. We trackers called it the batten down the hatches week. Making sure that if Remy did indeed remember me, she knew that whatever had happened, she'd better damn well keep her trap shut if she knew what was good for her. Though I had strong suspicions about who it was at Packin who carried them out, I knew nothing about charm executions. They were the most guarded of Packin's secrets. But by God, they're not going to get my Remy because of my bonehead mistake. I watched as Constantine made a beeline for her and felt my jaw clench. If he touched her with even a finger, I would have him ejected. You don't touch the charms at presentation. But when Constantine had viewed the charms at the last auction he'd been allowed to attend, he was outbid, no doubt a lesson learned on his part. He'd outrageously done just that and gotten away with it. I watched as he offered Remy a glass of champagne, which she refused. Atta girl, Remy. You're mine. Remy. Mary Ann and I, with Matron and the posse, rode up in an elevator as Matron recommenced surveying my appearance and cackling, "Oh, Remy," noises at me that could have shaved the fuzz off a peach. The doors opened. I peered inside, pretty much expecting, I don't know, maybe a medieval torture chamber, whips, chains, racks. What I saw surprised me even more. It was more like an elegant hotel ballroom, though smaller, more intimate. There were 3 cut-glass chandeliers suspended from the ceiling, throwing rainbow prisms around the room, a thick fuchsia-colored carpet, and frothy layers of thin, shimmering white tapestries cascading down from the ceiling where windows should have been, but weren't. There were no windows. But what there was men, all dressed in tuxedos, about 50 of them. Not nuts to butts, but not spread out sparsely either. They were all ages and all staring, not just at me, but at Carmen, Inga, Prizes, and Lula and Kelly too, who I spotted in the crowd easily. Each one of the women was the center of attention, a disproportionate knot of men rousting about her, all seeming to be jockeying for position. "Go, Remy," Matron urged from behind as both Mary Ann and I stepped forward into the room. "Where's the door?" was all I could think. Was the elevator the only way in? Men immediately approached me. Mary Ann smiled a bit tentatively, and a lot actoringly in my opinion, and moved out into the swell. One man stepped directly in front of me and held out a fluted glass of champagne in overture. "Miss Leismaker," he said in a heavy Australian accent. "Welcome. May I interest you in some champagne? We have other spirits if champagne is not to your taste." He pronounced it "taste," while smiling at me a 1,000,000-megawatt smile. Insane, I thought. Doesn't this lame brain realize I've been kidnapped? He looked mid-40s, tanned and confident, all jazzed up in a tux that probably cost half my college tuition,
the kind rich people wear when they want you to know they're rich. He had black hair, was at least 6 feet tall, and had warm, friendly brown eyes above an expensively sculpted nose. I ignored him, backed away, began weaving my way about the room's perimeter along the wall. Where was the door? The room was not square. I didn't count how many sides it had, but there were extra ones. A hexagon, maybe? I should have counted. I didn't. I just kept walking, trying to ignore the stairs, dodge the approaches, kept looking. There just had to be a way out. I saw nothing, though, just chrome wall sconces affixed at intervals on the dark inlaid wooden walls lighting the room along with the chandeliers. A second circuit around the room, another, I spotted nothing. That's when I realized I was looking in the wrong direction. If there was a way out, it had been well concealed, and I sure wasn't going to see it. But what about the men? If there was another way out other than the elevator we'd been brought up on, they would know where it was. Look at their eyes, Rem, I told myself. Their body language. And I saw it. So many of the men were following me with their eyes as I scuttled around and around the room. I finally saw it, in more than one of them. As I approached a certain wall panel, they tensed, relaxed after I walked past it. That had to be the door, and they sure wouldn't have tensed like that if it was locked. Nope. These men probably wouldn't tolerate their being locked in a room. That door was unlocked, and if I could get through, run fast enough, I'd have a shot. But where was the friggin' door handle? There was nothing on the wall but the chrome lighting sconce. And then an image from some old movie, perhaps, flashed across my mind. A dungeon, a character reaching up and twisting the flaming torch affixed to the dungeon's stone wall. The stone wall opening, twisting in. A hidden doorway. I was going for the chrome sconce. Next circuit, I'd grab the sconce, yank it, twist it, and no doubt make a hideous fool out of myself when nothing happened. But desperation does something to your brain, to your instincts. You do stuff like that. And I did. And the damn wall opened just like in the movies to an empty hallway beyond, to an exploding pandemonium behind me. I ran like I'd never run in my life. God, it felt good.
I hope you've enjoyed these chapters of The Liar Charms. If you'd like to purchase the complete audiobook, it's for sale on Amazon, Apple Books, Google Play Books, Nook Books, Kobo, and many more storefronts. Also, you can borrow it for free from your local library. Just tell the library to first download it from Bibliotheca. They'll know what that means. Thanks again for listening.